Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and this is my week of reading wrap-up where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and then potentially could read next week based on my mood. I wanted to get this out this weekend, but we had a cyclone bomb was what they were calling it. It was this insane weather spectacular that cleared all of the wildfires. So we are now wildfire free in California. Yes, oh, so good. And it helped to reduce the drought by considerable numbers. But it also means that it was so dark and rainy and loud rain, not just like a little bit of rain. And I think that was going to have an impact on the sound quality and definitely the light. So also because I'm still a little under the weather, I just took the time to rest. So thanks for indulging me, but I did finish some books that I want to talk about. Let's talk about this one first. Rich Rewards by Alice Adams. I read this with Leo from A Little Book Life, and I talked about it in my last video. I was trying to pinpoint how I was thinking about Alice Adams and what she was bringing to mind, and I nailed it. I think very Armistead Maupin from Tales of the City. This is, if you take that type of era and that type of vibe and apply it to women, then you have Alice Adams. So this was set in the 1970s in San Francisco and Marin. We have Daphne, who is an interior decorator. She kind of fell into that role. She is escaping a bad relationship in Boston, and she moves to San Francisco to help a friend of hers that she's been friends with since college. And the friend has bought a home in San Francisco and wants her to redo it. And so we get this cross section of craftsmen that she comes in contact with, who are kind of artists and craftspeople who are kind of helping her as she's living and decorating this home. Agatha, the woman who owns this home, wants to introduce Daphne to her friends. And so they go to a dinner party at the Houston's house, which is across in Marin. And the Houstons are a volatile, strange family, and they're in the middle of implosion. We've got the wife who is a little artistic and clearly unhappy, clearly not pleased with life and what's going on in her life. Her husband is definitely spending time or very interested in this woman, Stacy. She's young and a divorcee, blonde, and very perky, and there's clearly a vibe between them. There's a daughter, and the daughter is an adult daughter, and she does arts, and so she and Daphne kind of hit it off and become friendly. And then there's a son who returned from Vietnam and who is messed up. He is violent, full of rage, has a maybe drug problem, definitely alcohol problems. But all of a sudden, Daphne's kind of sucked into their maelstrom. There's junkies, and there's hustlers, and there's different traversing the city and meeting different people in different places as she's kind of helping to restore this home. Meanwhile, she is observing everyone. She's an observer, but she's also really judging, kind of not a very nice character. So she has points of view of everyone, and no one's very nice. She either wants to sleep with the men or has something negative to say about the women. I didn't really like her disposition, didn't really like her points of view. This is one of Alice Adams' earlier works, and from what Leo said, it's not up to the same caliber as some of her other things. Definitely not Superior Women. That's a much better book. In here, there's a lot of little strange, very San Francisco. It's not strange for San Francisco, but I can imagine if you're reading from someplace else, it would feel strange. There is some questions about how Agatha got her money. Her father was a general and maybe was involved with the death of Allende and the Pinochet government. So there's some political aspects. There's violence, violence against women, violence and lies and deceit and treachery. Ultimately, it's a fast pace. It's pretty short, but there was the plot required a lot of very strange coincidences to happen, and it just was a little shallow. And I didn't enjoy the main character Daphne. I didn't like her outlook and her perspective, and didn't really care about any of the characters here either. So for me, it was interesting-ish from a point in time perspective, but the rest of it, I would say if you're looking to try Alice Adams' Superior Women, start there. But this one, not so much. Then, you will be happy to note, I finished Volume 3. I bet you never thought you'd see the day. I certainly didn't. This is Marcel Proust, In Search of Lost Time, Volume 3, The Gramatis Way. This was translated by Mark Treharne. This one was a slog. In this, we have Marcel growing up a little bit more, and only a little bit more. So he's still petulant, he's still so snobby and arrogant and trying to insert himself in all sorts of scenarios and situations. At the beginning, he gets booted out of town because he's bothering the Duchess of Guermantes, because he's obsessed. He thinks he's in love with her, and so he keeps following her around. He keeps trying to force an introduction, and she sees through him. He's young, but it's ridiculous, it's silly, embarrassing, and so she tells him, basically sends the message that just get out of her face is basically what happens. And so the family sends him away, and they send him to he decides to go to this town to visit his friend, Saint-Loup. Saint-Loup is actually the nephew of the Duke and Duchess of Guermantes, but they have become good friends after Balbec, which was in the last volume. He sees Saint-Loup, who's enraptured with this woman who's not appropriate, but he's in love with her, and she's kind of a coquette, just like Odette, and he's trying to. He does have a good, strong friendship with Saint-Loup, but he's also trying to leverage from Saint-Loup an introduction to the Guermantes house. So he hasn't given up his crazy ways and his infatuation. He comes back, and we have a very, really tender, beautiful scenes with his grandmother. I'm not going to spoil anything there. And then he spends more time in society. So the bulk of this book is very much about Paris salons, what was happening in the world at the time, and the aristocracy, and how people were kind of working their way through these salons, who held power, who didn't, how all of that transpired. And we get to see specifically through the Guermantes how the Duchess becomes this wit, and how she kind of holds power through this intellectual way, and also the way other people capitulate to her, including the princess. And so it's very interesting dynamics, but there's a lot of dialogue here in this one, which you don't get a lot of in the other ones. Interesting, but man, it takes a long time to get through it. So I think I mentioned before that I've started a new method, which is I just read this like normal. I'm not treating it preciously. I'm not reading it like it's some delicious morsel. I'm just reading it like any other book, and it's helped. At the end, there's a very tender, very sad moments with Swan makes a reappearance, and that's quite interesting. And we have the introduction of Charles, who is going to play a very pivotal role in the rest of the series. Charles is also related to the Guermantes, and he is trying to put a stopper between our narrator and spending additional future time with the Gomorrahs and kind of making his way through society, and with interesting results. He's kind of a funny character and very interesting. So I'm very happy that I finally finished this. It took far too long, but yay. Moving on. Next up, I had an Edelweiss digital arc that I was very excited to get. This is for the Sam Wyndham series that I've been reading by Abir Mukherjee. This is the 5th in the series. This is The Shadows of Men. And this one was a wild start. In this one, we open with his sergeant taking a more prominent role instead of kind of being the sidekick. He's stepping into the main story. And this is Sergeant Surendrath Banerjee. Now, Surendrath has been his sidekick and his sergeant. They're friends, they live together. And even though he is an Indian national, and obviously Captain Sam Wyndham is Scottish, but they both work at the police force, the British police force. It's caused tension in Suren's family because they want independent Indian state, and he wants to learn from the British so that he can understand how to help when the transition happens. But he thinks that he does put this deference into the British system of rule. In this story, we open with the fact that he is sitting in jail and he has been framed for murder. And he's starting to question why he's been working for this imperial colonial state, supporting them, and he's not getting any benefits, and he's not being, he's going to be basically tried and hung if he doesn't prove that he is innocent of this. So then we have Sam trying to solve what actually happened while Surendrath is not able to help himself for various different reasons, and it's incredibly fast paced. What is interesting about this one specifically is that they take a trip to Bombay. They're usually stationed in Calcutta, which is the head of British colonial rule. By going to Bombay, there's a really interesting intersection with another series that I love, which is the Perveen Mystery series that is done by Sujata Macy. So the first one of that series is The Widows of Malabar Hill. And Malabar Hill features in this, and it's the exact same time frame. So it's interesting to hear some of the places that Macy talked about in her series showing up in this book. In this one, what's happening really is that there are issues that are taking place between the Hindus and the Muslims, and this is and has been started and antagonized, and because of the death of the person that Surendrath is said to have murdered. And so we start to see some of the intricacies of what's actually happening in Indian society at the time, and how the British are leveraging that for their benefit. So another great one to the series. I really enjoy it. It's fast paced. It's kind of like action mystery. It's not staid and quiet. It's propulsive, so much going on, but really well done. So another great episode in the series. And then, so this one came up from my library, and I had to read it. I had to see what the buzz was. This is Hilary Rodham Clinton and Louise Penny, State of Terror. Now, first off, I have some issues with the naming convention. I think Louise Penny should be up higher than Hillary Rodham Clinton, but I get it, I guess. So as you may know, I'm a big fan of Louise Penny and her series. What I like about Louise Penny and her mystery series is that it's the Armand Gamache series. It's set in a little town outside of Quebec. It's filled with poetry and philosophy and leadership and power, and it's thoughtful. It's incredibly thoughtful. So I was really interested to see how we would take basically an outline, what I expected to be kind of an outline from Hillary, kind of the germ of the story, but then have it fleshed out by the mistress of mystery, Louise Penny. And unfortunately, in my opinion, this is really heavy-handed. There's much more Hillary than Louise Penny. So the book starts with a brand new administration. There had been a previous administration that had just left, and they left everything in tatters, a la Trump organization. Had inept but pretty horrible people in play and in power. And our main character is the Secretary of State. She has been asked to take this on, even though she was previously a media mogul. So she's left that role. She's given that power over to her daughter, and she has accepted the role in the administration as the Secretary of State. Though she really doesn't get along with the president, and so everyone's a little concerned as to why she was asked to take on that role. Her first foreign trip is a disaster, and she immediately recognizes that she may have been set up to fail, to be sidelined quickly. As she's kind of pondering that and pondering what she's actually doing in this administration, bombs start to go off overseas. And that kind of propels the opening gambit of what becomes this chase to find out who set the bombs, why were they set, and what their intentions are before anything else is done. And it's very, I think I mentioned, it's heavy-handed, not a lot of nuance. There's so many coincidences and so many times that you think, like, not possible. It's hard to take it seriously, and I would have liked something with a little more serious or nuance than what we have. Look, I read it incredibly fast. There are a ton of characters, a ton of things going on, but because we're moving from plot point to plot point to plot point, there isn't a lot of time for the reflection that you would get in a Louise Penny book, and that those quiet moments, those introspective moments that she's known for. And I think the book suffers for it. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't what I wanted. But I think for some people, they're going to love it. And, the takedowns of some of the leaders of some of these countries and her admiration for others shines through. But through the whole thing, I couldn't get her voice out of my head. And it really was supposed to be based on someone entirely different. So, yeah, right. So, yeah, mixed bag here. But I would love to know if you plan on reading it or if you have. So that's what I finished. Let me show you what I'm currently reading. Yeah, I've moved on to volume 4 with Marcel Proust, In Search of Lost Time. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is a different translator. This is John Sturrock did this translation. This one kicks off with some scandal. We have Charleuse involved in a sexual escapade with a man. And so all of a sudden we have a much spicier volume involved right here. So that is quite interesting. I'll be reading this hopefully quickly. Then I'm listening to audio of Women of Troy. This is from Pat Barker. And this is the second in the series that she's doing on Troy and from a feminist perspective. I find this one much more feminist because we're focused on Versailles, and we're not jumping from so many different women's voices. We're kind of more centered with her, and she's kind of telling us what has happened after the Trojan horse has gone in, and where things stand as they're waiting for the wind to change so they can go back to Greece. So there's a lot happening. She's kind of dealing with her new role because she used to be the slave of Achilles, and now she is married and she has more of a status in the camp. But at the same time, she's seeing all the other women and what's happening, and so we get to see it through her eyes. I'm enjoying it very much. Should be done with that quickly. Then another library hold, I really wanted to read this. This is the Thursday Murder Club. This is volume 2, The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. And I just started this. It's already super propulsive. It's a set of older people who live in a retirement community, and we have a psychiatrist, we have an ex-spy, we have some other people with some interesting skills. They're going to get drawn into something quite interesting. I think it's going to be involved with spycraft. So we'll see what happens. I'm only about 2 or 3 chapters in, so looking forward to reading this one. And then I'm going to be starting this with Leo the Little Book Life. This is Bewilderment by Richard Powers. So really excited to read this and with Leo. So that'll be coming up. And yeah, that's about it. I hope you had a great week. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, we are still in a global pandemic. So if you can get the vaccine, please do. If you're out in public, wear a mask, maintain safe social distance, wash your hands and don't touch your face. So that's it for me for now. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.